Hello and welcome to Overdose and Chill Live, number 51. Had 51 of these already, which is pretty impressive. I'm here, I'm Elliot, if you don't know me. I'm here today with Sam Penny from Cheese Therapy. Sam, good afternoon.
Good to be here, Elliot.
Welcome to Overdose and Chill Live. We have just recently started working together, Sam, so we're pretty early in our sort of relationship as well. But for people who don't know you, we're going to talk about a little bit about you, but also don't know Cheese Therapy. Love to hear about who you are, who is Cheese Therapy, and what is the story of Cheese Therapy in a nutshell. We'll be diving deeper into how it all came about, what started Cheese Therapy, but from a snapshot, introduce the world and our viewers to who you are.
To me, Sam Penny. Look, geez, I don't know where to start. I'm one of those people who can't sit still. I've done a lot of things. I've been in the army. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I love entrepreneurship. I've set up entrepreneur networks for QUT, Queensland Uni of Tech. I've had a medical device company, a chain of hair salons. My biggest mistake was a chain of hair salons. And a whole range of other things. A heap of swimming stuff like mad swimming adventures. And then sort of everything has seemed to have culminated in this great business that my partner Helen and I have created called Cheese Therapy.
Fantastic. There's a lot to unpack there and a lot to ask about. I'm not sure if we'll even have time to dive into all of those lives that you've lived. But I'd also love to ask our viewers to throw in questions as well. We're going to be talking for the next 30, 40 minutes. I'd love to hear what questions our audience has for you, also for Overdose as well, but I think you're the more interesting part of this story. So, like I said, there's a lot to unpack there. Tell us a little bit about, I'm going to go backwards a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about Cheese Therapy and what you're doing now, what you're planning to do soon. But I'd love to go back a little bit to, I guess, the start of Cheese Therapy. And then I want to go back a bit further and find out what happened that made that sort of transition through all of those lives that you've lived to where Cheese Therapy is now. But tell us a little bit about what Cheese Therapy does, what you do in the market, what you're trying to do.
Yeah, certainly. Well, let me first talk about how we actually started, because I think it's an important part of the story. So 6 years ago, Helen and I were holidaying in Vanuatu. And anybody who's been over there, you know that the main supermarket in Port Vila is Au Bon Marché. It's a French supermarket. So every single day we were just buying different champagnes, but also they had this massive long cheese counter. It would have been a good sort of 5 meters long, just full of all these amazing French cheeses, and they had terrines and foie gras and everything that you could possibly want. But all these cheeses in particular were cheeses that we haven't seen before, tasted, smelled. And I just thought, how can we be in a developing country but have access to amazing produce? Because when we came back to Australia, we wanted to go out and get some amazing cheeses, but quickly realised that we've lost our deli scene. We're now served up some pretty bland, homogenized products in our major supermarkets, where it's all about margins, and there's not a lot of heart and soul in many of the items that you see on the shelf. And so we just thought, well, what if we create a cheese club? Because we wanted a cheese club. We wanted to get some great cheese. So let's fly some cheese in. And I'm sure that we'll be able to find some other people who want to be in a cheese club with us. So that was the limit of our market research. It was based on what we wanted. But you know what? I think sort of so many great ideas come out of the passion. And then it's just, the numbers. Can we find 100 people? Can we find 200? 1,000 people to be part of this cheese club. And so we launched 5 years ago with a really close mate of mine, a guy called Peter Russell Clark. You know, Australia's first celebrity chef back in the, what was it, the 80s with his Come and Get It show. And he was Mr. Cheese. You know, his famous catch cry, where's the cheese?
Where's the cheese?
And yeah, and so basically for a good 4 years, Helen and I, it was just the two of us in the business, just, you know, cutting the cheese, wrapping the cheese, packing the cheese, sending the cheese, doing everything, just the two of us. And then we hit January last year, January 2020, when one of our cheesemakers, and for those, you know, I think many people right around the world are aware of how devastating Australia's bushfires were at the start of 2020. And one of our cheesemakers, Milawa, which is on the border of Victoria and New South Wales, the CEO there, Credwin, she reached out to me and gave me a call and just said, look, Sam, we have lost all of our summer trade because the governments have said nobody go into these regions. You know, the bushfires was so extensive right across the whole country. And a cheesemaker has to make cheese over about a 3-month period for a specific moment in time. And you can't forecast this stuff. You can't forecast that you're going to lose 95% of your footpath traffic. And so there was effectively 2 tons of cheese sitting there in their caves that were potentially going to just get chucked out. And I said, well, Credwin, how about we create a Milawa box? And to be honest, I thought we'd sell 50 boxes. We ended up in February last year, we sold 2,000 boxes. We got rid of the whole 2 tons of cheese, financially got them back up on their feet. And Helen and I got the last box out. It was the end of the first week of March 2020. And we just thought, wow, how good is 2020? Can 2020 get any better? And we just thought, we can just sit around now and wait for Christmas, wait for the Christmas trade to come around.
Little did you know.
And then little did we know, 2 weeks later, all of Australia, the entire world goes into lockdown. And I then had every other cheesemaker on the phone to me. Half of them were in tears. You know, Sam, can you do for us what you did for Milawa? And Helen and I sort of sat back for probably about 3-4 days, just seeing what was going to happen, where, nobody knew what was going to happen. But, we thought nobody is stepping up to be the champion for these small producers. Nobody's standing up there and just saying, Australia, these guys need some help. And we just thought, what, stuff it. We've got nothing to lose. Because if we don't do this, I was very sure that nobody else would. And so we stood up and we basically just went cheesemaker after cheesemaker, just right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to create something called the therapy box. And it's 4 different makers, 4 different cheeses in a box. And as I'll buy 1,000 pieces in each one. As we sell out, we'll move to the next 4 cheesemakers so that everybody shared a go. Everybody had a go. And we're doing, we're doing about 1,000 boxes a week at that stage early on, and just really spreading the love. But then we started doing curated boxes of just the cheesemakers, and it just kept getting better and better. But here in Australia, we had a system called JobKeeper. So the government, if your business was affected by COVID, they would effectively pay for your staff $1,500 per person. None of our cheesemakers were eligible for JobKeeper because their business went so well. In fact, most of them were up about 20 or 30% on 2019 because of the work that Cheese Therapy had done. And it was just because we were able to mobilise the Australian public. We were able to go out there to the Australians and, who are stuck at home, just going, life sucks being in lockdown, and everybody felt so hopeless, but they just wanted to do something. They just wanted to help someone where they could. And that's what they did. They reached out and they just go, yep, I can buy a box. It's going to make me feel better because I'm eating great cheese, but at the same time, I know that I'm helping. I'm helping a small business.
That was one of the questions I was thinking of as you were telling that story, because obviously there were environmental catalysts for some of this stuff to happen, just as we saw in the broader e-commerce industry as well. But primary producers have always had it tough in Australia and always needed that support. But the other side of that, the consumer, the people actually eating cheese, going to supermarkets where it seems more like a race to the middle of the road in terms of quality and quantity. Do you think there was already a desire there for people to actually find and consume this beautiful cheese that they might find on a country trip or in a beautiful wine region? And was the fires and COVID just a catalyst for that? Was there already a desire to actually find this beautiful cheese that they couldn't grab in a supermarket?
Yeah, look, I think that particularly over the last sort of 5 years, we've seen more of a push of people wanting to try more artisanal products. The way that we built Cheese Therapy was one where if we had the right catalyst, we could rapidly expand. And that was always part of our, the way that we built the architecture of Cheese Therapy. But I think sort of the catalyst, particularly the bushfires and our use of social media, of sharing a message and, garnishing, being able to get that great support from the Australian public, it also then made them realise that, wow, sort of these amazing artisan products are easily available to me at home. They will deliver cheese to my front door when I'm not allowed to, effectively leave the house. And so, like we hear so much, the e-commerce industry has accelerated 10 years. And I think it was inevitable that, Cheese Therapy, would be where it is, but it would have happened, a few years down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to go back to Cheese Therapy soon, because I know there's some plans underway to expand and look at how you're delivering. But I want to go back even further, because as you mentioned in your intro, there's quite a bit of history before you got to delivering beautiful cheese to people. And you mentioned a few sort of entrepreneurial ventures that you had, some more successful than others by the sounds of it. But going back even further, so you started career as a civil engineer. Is that where you started out?
Yeah, so I got a scholarship to go to Australian Defence Force Academy to study civil engineering. I always wanted to be a doctor. I always wanted to do emergency medicine. I just missed out on the mark for medicine, and I had this scholarship to do civil engineering. I thought, stuff it, I'm going into the army. Sort of progressed 3 years later. The army and I came to the mutual decision that probably not the best place for me. So I then completed my engineering up in Brisbane, spent about a year and a half as a civil engineer working for some of the biggest firms in the country. But what I found with particularly the army and civil engineering, the way that they're structured, is that you have to do your time. You need to spend 3 years here, 3 years here, 3 years here, 3 years here. I'm not that kind of person. I'm the person who, I want to just be there. Yeah. And so whilst I was the second engineering firm that I was working for, I actually became their IT manager, because I'd written quite a few databases in my time for some other engineering firms. Yep. And I then started an MBA in new venture management. And that, I've always had a passion for small business, but this was really sort of my first sort of formal move, I guess, into more of that entrepreneurial world. And it was great doing this, because what I also did was I set up something called QUT Entrepreneur at University in Brisbane. And it was backed by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Dennis Gibson, to basically create a network of university, and also to the wider community, entrepreneurs who want to learn about entrepreneurship. And I ended up having about 2,000 members. And so I'd hold networking events, but also bring in, patent attorneys and accountants and, state development, the Queensland government, and all these, different resources to educate all these young entrepreneurs. And, even though it was sort of educating all of them, it was also educating me. And, just building a great understanding of how to create a community of like-minded people who just have so much passion and just a yearning to learn.
I'm drawing a lot of parallels between that experience and what you're doing now, given that you're essentially, on one side of the equation, you're selling cheese to, a voracious customer base. But the other side of that is that you're actually working with producers who are fantastic at producing cheese. They make a brilliant product, but maybe not so great at, marketing. Maybe it's logistics. Maybe they're good at logistics, but it's a challenge for them given where they might be geographically. And you're sort of doing that same thing, am I right? In that you're sort of coaching them on these areas. You don't know how to make cheese. You know how to find and taste beautiful cheeses. These people are fantastic at doing that, but you're sort of coaching them along that sort of digital and e-commerce journey as well.
Yeah, exactly. Dairy Australia, for example, brought me in twice last year to educate the dairy industry on just marketing, how to quickly get their business online, particularly early on in lockdowns, so that they could, really start to at least have some e-commerce sales, but also, working with them to develop their story. I think so many producers are so busy on creating their product that when they go to market, they're only selling the features and benefits, but not that whole backstory, which is the real unique part of so many of these small producers. They forget, and it's often hard for many of us to think about sort of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing and sharing that with the world. And all producers, most producers are like that. Sort of, I make great camembert, and I get the milk from here, but it's sort of, why are you making cheese? And so it was a really interesting process to work with the dairy industry across Australia to educate them on, guys, you need to really draw out more of your passions and more of your why. And let's not talk about features and benefits, because that's what every big brand is doing in a supermarket. Let's get back to what makes you unique.
Yeah, and that's if you imagine anybody who's been to a wine tasting, for example, or something like that, obviously you talk through tasting notes, you talk about the grapes, those sorts of things, but so much more than that. You're talking about the vineyard, who founded it, the people behind it, who does what. It builds that human connection to the product rather than just how does it taste.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Helen and I, every single cheese that we have ever sold, we've written tasting notes on. And, we've got, I reckon, probably the largest database of cheese tasting notes in the world. We've done a lot of cheeses in over 5 years. But one thing that we don't do is talk about the actual flavors of the cheese, because when we started Cheese Therapy, we were very mindful that we didn't want to be like the wine industry, where sort of you're trying to taste cherry notes and tobacco and all these different things. Where for me, I love my wine and I love great wine, but I can't taste any of those things. And understanding that everybody tastes differently, and so we were very conscious right from the start of with cheese. And with and like wine, you like it or you don't like it. And there's reasons why you may like that one over something else.
Yeah.
But Helen, always says we taste with our mind. And the more you understand about the ingredients and the provenance and the guy who actually makes the cheese, or how they farm the cows, that cheese is going to taste just so much greater. You've just got a much deeper connection to it, and really all those flavors just pop.
Yeah. I'd love to talk a bit about some of the more, it's fantastic talking about cheese, and it is lunchtime right now and I haven't eaten. So I might move on from the actual product right now. I'd love to know how you're, from a more logistic operational perspective, what you're doing to actually make the producers' lives easier as well. So you're moving a good amount of their produce right now, which is bloody fantastic. What are the bits in between that? What are the challenges in actually getting their produce, which is made out in whoop somewhere potentially, to a customer's front doorstep, whilst keeping it chilled to the right temperature and whatnot?
Yeah. Oh, look, we have learned over 5 years just how big Australia is, how hot it gets, how unreliable services can be at times. We've learnt it all, but I guess one of the things that we're really good at is if there is a problem, let's try and work out a solution for it. So, to give you an example, last year we saw a real degradation in the Australia Post service.
Yeah.
Now, we've been using a particular insulation product for the previous 4 years, but it was good for a couple of days, but not 4 days like we were starting to see with Australia Post. So we spent a good couple of $100,000 last year on developing an insulation product that could live up to the Australia Post service delays. Rather than just bitching and moaning about how poor Australia Post was becoming, we just thought, well, that's what it is. We need to create something that's going to keep cheese chilled for 4 days. That's what we're going to go out and make. And it was really important for us to sort of, yep, that's what it is. Also, there's some, one of our delivery partners, HDS, Home Delivery Service, they've got about 500 refrigerated vehicles right around the country. And so they now deliver probably 85% of our deliveries cold for that last mile straight to the person's door. And that has been an absolute godsend, so that, we just have a lot greater confidence in being able to deliver a better product to the customer.
I guess, with an engineer's background, you might enjoy taking your cheesemonger hat off and your engineering hat on and trying to solve some of these problems as well. Does that give you a bit of personal satisfaction, not just solving a problem for somebody else, but actually, getting in there and actually resolving something and finding a solution?
Oh, 100%. Sort of something that I've always, I think that, when I look back on all the things I've done, it's sort of, I wonder if that's possible, and let's try it. Let's see if it works. I've had a lot of, success, but way more failures in my time. So I love just, that's the problem. Let's look at the data. Let's see what we can do. Let's try a few iterations of it, and let's see if we can come to a solution on it. And I think that's why cheese therapy has been so successful, is that we have tried so damn hard. And that's why we are where we are today.
That's fantastic. I'd love to talk about what's next for cheese therapy. I know you have some big plans, and I'm not going to steal your thunder. I know you announced some things on LinkedIn recently. But yeah, talk to us about the next evolution of cheese therapy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this next evolution is exciting. We launched coffee the week before Christmas, and it was Australian grown coffee, because we grow great coffee in Australia and also in the South Pacific, but we still bring in coffee from Colombia and Ethiopia, and it just doesn't make sense to fly coffee beans in 15,000 kilometers away when we actually have it in our backyard. And so I went out and met with each of these farmers at their place in Byron Bay, Atherton Tablelands, and also in Vanuatu, and just going, this is what I want to do. I want to share with Australia that we actually grow some pretty good produce here in the country. And that just went so well. And then we thought, okay, January we moved into small family wines, because of the China debacle with wines. Basically Treasury and the big boys got pushed out of China. They've pushed the medium guys out of Dan Murphy's. The medium guys now push small guys out of BWS. So now there's all these small vineyards who don't have any traffic to their cellar door, just going, now what do we do? And we also have moved into chocolate as well, as so cheese, chocolate, wine, coffee. I'm basically building my lifestyle here. And after sort of all these categories just selling so well, Helen and I recognised that we're no longer a cheese business. We're actually a destination for artisan produce. And since January, we've been working on turning cheese therapy actually into a marketplace, so that because financially we can't have 10,000 products in our inventory. But if we create a marketplace and capitalize on the loyal customer base that we have, and the great traffic we get to our site, and Helen and my ability to share the stories of artisan producers and share that right across the country, I want each of these small businesses, they're small mum and dad businesses with so much heart in their product. If we can help them with their sales and marketing through our marketplace, it's going to give them a huge leg up. And so we have teamed up with a company in Melbourne called Marketplacer, and they run Myers website, the Woolies marketplace, they run that, Surf Stitch. These guys are just the best, great tech, solid platform. We're running with Shopify Plus as our front end that you guys are thankfully all over. It's just such an amazing moment in time. Every single day at the moment, I have 8 meetings with artisan producers, all half-hour chats with them, just to hear their story. And when we launch in September with our marketplace, I cannot wait to share like the dozens of producers, what they do, their produce, their stories. Man, it is going to be unbelievable. But the marketplace, it's all about taking part of that pain point away from them, which is that sales and marketing, and also for Australians now having that one place to access product with real heart and soul. It's just going to be amazing.
It is. And I think that the term you keep saying, which is missing from a lot of the, marketplaces are everything right now. Everyone's launching a marketplace, it seems. And, there are some big players out there who are keen on getting a slice of that pie as well. But as we've seen with, your grocery duopoly, walking down the aisle, it's bland, it's ordinary. You just pick whatever fits your budget, really. But what you keep saying, which I think is missing from so much of this, is the heart and soul, telling those stories, amplifying these small producers who just make bloody good stuff. And they're relying on you to amplify it, to talk about it, and for that to be the thing that resonates with the consumer. Because as you said, you sell quite a lot of cheese, but you also get just a lot of traffic to the site. People just looking at, the stories, reading about, the actual production, or reading about where it's come from, where it's made, that region of Australia, perhaps. To me, that's the thing that is missing in the marketplace, especially around groceries and produce.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I reckon a perfect example of sort of the real power of where our marketplace is going to be is if you look at the South Pacific. Now, economically, the South Pacific in the last 18 months has been pushed back 10 years. Now, we're working with Pacific Trade Invest, which is funded by our federal government, to showcase Pacific Island food producers. And just before this, I met with with a producer in Port Vila called Vanuatu Craft. And the great thing there is that, even though we can't go and visit them because 95% of their sales rely on the tourist trade. They have missed out on 95% of their entire sales for the last 18 months. But I know that we can bring their produce in and showcase that to Australians. And I know that Australians will just back it because, all I need to tell everybody is, well, firstly, if it's going to be on our site, it's going to be bloody good. But secondly, by buying this, you're not just buying, say, a paw jam. You're buying something that is actually going to provide significant value outside that jar.
Yeah.
And and I know that we can create a bit of almost like a cause marketing in being able to sort of really highly target areas that need help. Apart from just having an amazing website with great produce, but if there are pockets that do need help, like if we have another Australian bushfire, we can direct our efforts into particular areas. Aid doesn't help small business, trade helps small business. And the more trade we can do with these South Pacific islands, for example, like what we did with Miloa, it's pouring money into these small local businesses that have to buy the milk from the farmer. They've got truck drivers, they've got all this money that filters out through the local communities. So cheese therapy has, I guess, a real conscious point of being able to help, not just have great stuff. And also, sort of part of what we're creating as well is a 3PL, third-party logistics service in Sydney, and particularly for the South Pacific Islands, there's no flights at the moment, so they actually can't get their produce out. But if we'll work with Pacific Trade Invest to get all of their produce into our Sydney warehouse, and so that we can handle that pick, pack logistics, but also handle international shipping for them. So yeah, there's so many benefits to where I see our next evolution is. We're making an amazing business, but being able to create something that is going to have meaning and purpose.
Just do a quick reset for anybody who's tuned in after we started. I'm Elliot from Overdose. We're here on Overdose and Chill Live with Sam Penny from Cheese Therapy. We're talking all things glorious, primary produced cheese from small artisanal retailers and producers, I should say. But also beyond that, we talk about coffees, wines, jams, other produce. We're inviting questions from viewers. We have a question here from Robert in Sydney. Rob's asking, how are you bringing together all of these small, passionate individuals and making sure your customer delivery and experience or customer experience is seamless? We touched on that a little bit before with, some of the delivery operations, but at the same time, I guess there's also a piece there where you're producing cheese a certain time during the year, or maybe not even cheese, but other produce as well. Same with wine specifically. How are you making that seamless in terms of, when those products are in their prime, when they're best to consume, and getting them to the consumer's front door and bringing them together so that you can actually put together a bit of a bundle of your own. You can pick your wine, coffee, and cheese and get them all delivered.
Yeah, I think, how do we bring together this sort of customer delivery experience? I think firstly from the website, ensuring that there's uniformity across how we present each of the producers and how the products present. You have a look on some marketplaces and they just don't have any control over, how a product image, for example, is shown. We've got a great customer service team, and so they handle a lot of those, those daily questions of, where's my order, when's my order being shipped, can I do this, can I do that? Any questions outside of that, we push that back to the producer. So we'll be able to handle probably 90%, I'd say, of customer inquiries with our team. We do a lot of education, product education with our customer service team. And also our team, I reckon, probably almost more passionate than me. They they do all their own study on each of the producers that we bring on. They love going onto their websites and hearing about their stories. And it's great when you've got a team that just really want to get involved like that. Also with our 3PL service in Sydney, and being able to have a temperature controlled environment for our packing and shipping cold logistics to the door, we're able to ensure that the customer experience is controlled. You know, everything arrives packaged nicely, and also, you know, for the vendor, if they're shipping direct from their place, that they've got the right packaging to use, that they're shipping in a way that's going to ensure that the product's going to turn up right. You know, many of our producers need cold logistics, and that's why we're setting up this 3PL, because you know, we owe it to the customer to deliver a great product, but also it is a big reflection on our brand if the product doesn't arrive right. And if we aren't controlling it with our 3PL, we're effectively putting our faith in the hands of the producer to get it there in great shape. So yeah, we've put a lot of effort into ensuring that that customer experience and the customer journey is consistent, and just the best we can possibly do.
And I guess, you know, it's one thing damaging your own brand through a poor customer experience or a poor delivery, but it's another thing damaging this produce and damaging somebody else's potential brand if it doesn't, you know, turn out right, if it turns up that it hasn't been chilled to the right temperature, if the cheese is bad. You know, you've got a lot of responsibility there in terms of delivering somebody else's product to the front door exactly how it's intended to be consumed.
Yeah, look, I owe it to our small producers to do the best I possibly can to represent their business. You know, if I cannot get something delivered in a good manner to the customer, I've let every vendor down that's in that particular order. I've let Cheese Therapy down, but I've also let our producers down. And that's why they put so much faith in us to deliver, but also why our customers put so much faith in handing over their money to access these artisan products.
That's fantastic. I know we're getting to, you know, the tail end of this chat, and there's so much more we could talk about, but one thing I'd love to touch on is on the marketing side of things. There's obviously so many levers you could pull and work with across the broad marketing spectrum, and as everyone keeps saying, content is king. And I think that's somewhere that you guys have, you know, really locked down, that content piece. What are the sort of areas that you're looking at, worked with and successfully so far, but also looking at in the future in terms of where does that awareness piece come from? How do you reach more of the market?
Yeah. So when we started Cheese Therapy, we built it on the back of Facebook. So, you know, Facebook audience, you know, developing our fans. But at the same time, we always ensured that we built our email database alongside it, because we knew that nobody can ever take away our email database. Yeah, we might have, you know, I don't know, 50, 60,000 people across our socials, but that can easily go. And we certainly know that we don't get the reach out of posts like we used to. So we're always very conscious to build our emails and our SMS. You know, we've just tried so many things, but what I have found is that technology is moving so fast in the marketing world that, you know, this is why we're early days in our engagement with Overdose, because I know what we need to be doing, and I've got an understanding of, you know, SEO and, you know, pay-per-click and all those kinds of things, but I don't have the individual skills into each of those. And that's why sort of engaging Overdose, where you've got that amazing base of people who are just unbelievably brilliant, who can just go, okay, Sam, this is what we're doing on, you know, on SEO, or this is what we're doing on this particular campaign. These are the levers we're going to pull. And I have, I've put so much faith in you guys and trust, but at the same time, I know how, because I've got the knowledge, I know how to monitor and know whether you're going to, whether you're doing a good job or not. But at the same time, you're also our kind of people. I think it's a perfect relationship of your, Overdose's personality and Cheese Therapy's personality that I think is also going to work extremely well. So yeah, engaging an agency. I've had agencies in the past that I've worked with, but yeah, this one is just perfect. Was that a good plug?
That's an amazing plug. I wasn't expecting that at all. It's lovely to hear. Thank you. And that's exactly the thing. It's, you talked about how passionate your team is and how much they believe in the product and what they're selling, what they're doing. And I feel like that's the Overdose way as well. Like, we're passionate, get in, get shit done, get things moving. But at the same time, we rely on our clients to hold us accountable when that time comes. So you know what to monitor. You trust us to do the right thing. But you know how to go, hang on, I've noticed something here, and we look at it again. And I guess the other piece there is, you've also got, you mentioned you've got quite a social following. And you're actually doing quite a lot there in terms of influencer marketing and getting your product in front of people who have audiences as well. So expanding not just your own audience, but relying on other audiences too. Yeah,
look, you just need to go out and, find people who align with your brand. So, a couple of great people, for example, Chef Jason Roberts in Sydney, who just gets our brand. He loves artisan produce. He does beautiful creatives and and video, and he's really engaging in his lives on Instagram. And we've got another lady in Melbourne, Clean Eats from a Filthy Mouth. We can't swear as much as she does in her socials, but once again, she's just highly passionate person, highly engaging, aligned with our brand, and not being so precious of trying to sort of hold everything into ours. Letting go a little bit of the control, so to speak, and filtering out into other audiences, but ensuring that those audiences are like-minded.
It's character. And that's the character you need in this sort of thing, because a lot of the produce that you're producing, I'm sure there's plenty of characters out there that showcase as well. They're not just suits sitting in an office somewhere. They're real people with real stories and that character that you want to showcase.
Exactly.
Last question, and potentially a bit of a curveball, but coming into starting this business, starting to talk to these producers, selling their wares, their cheese, their produce. What has surprised you the most in this journey? What's the thing that's gone, I did not expect that? It might be about the consumer behavior, or it might be about the artisans themselves, or maybe about Australia or South Pacific. What's the one thing that you still, wake up going, I can't believe that?
It was still going back to January last year when we put together a Millowa box to help them after the Australian bushfires. And we put the call out to Australia via our socials, can you please help? And then, just thousands of people just flooded in. They bought the cheese, they shared the post, people really got behind it. And, we forgot that Australians, when someone needs a hand, Australians are the first to put their hand out and give you help, give you a hand. And it made us remember the Australian spirit. And it made us realize that, we're in a privileged position where if someone does need some help, we genuinely can, and, gather the community together around, Millowa, for example, or just the Australian cheesemakers in general, and just say, okay, Australia, this is where we need to lend a little bit of help. And that has been by far the most amazing experience.
It's a good reminder, because we can given current sort of political and social elements that are happening right now, it can be easy to forget that, you know, in times of need, there are still good people out there. There's still in a community that is willing to help each other. And that's a beautiful note to finish up on. Sam, thank you so much for chatting with us today. I'm sure we could chat for hours more. There's plenty more, but we'll definitely do it over wine and cheese at some point. But I'll let you get on to the rest of your conversations with your producers and set about your day. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No problem at all. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks.